we are muggles, and that wasn't a shoe advertisement. We actually want to review the case of Hongwei, a shoe sole manufacturer. So without further ado, let's get started.
I will explain about the deficiency in a company that may lead to the big problem for the company. Firstly, using low quality material. Due to the rising price of raw material external factor in the footwear industry, company decided to switch to cheaper grade material in the shoe production. For the implication, customer loyalty will decrease due to the falling to keep up with consumer expectation. If company continuously using low quality material, company will not be able to meet customer expectation because customer cannot feel the same experience as they bought products for the company before. Other than that, can bring damage to the brand reputation. One of the company objective is to improve the quality of Malaysian-made footwear. This could bring negative perception for the stakeholder of the company. And next, for the suggestion, should impose an average industry price on the products without compromising its quality. This can be done by eliminating non-value-added activities such as using GIT system in managing inventory, whereby no storage is needed to keep the inventory. Hence, company can save costs and can invest on high-quality material in producing footwear. Secondly, limited target market. Hongwei only focus on the young and middle-aged working adult as their target market where their shoe soles can meet the demand. For the implication, focusing based on certain demographic only means that a company may lose potential customers who do not fit the general demographic mold because the company does not concentrate on attracting those customers. This includes the loss of sales from people who might buy the product for someone else, as those people might not be aware the company offer the product to them. And next, for the suggestion, company should expand the target market. Company able to cater for the broad customer base because they have their own internal research and development department. Can diversify its product from the working shoewear, expand to the comfortable shoewear. Company can expand its customer base from the children to the senior citizen. Rising sport activity has significantly increased the sportswear market size globally. Consumers are wearing sports-inspired footwear in their daily life. With this, company able to keep pace about the customer changing need. Thirdly, lack of environmental awareness. Hongwei Holding Berhad do not concern about sustainability development in business, especially on the environment. As we can see in the diagram, element environment in sustainable development important to create company value, not just for the people and the company profit only. For the implication, footwear is a potential cause of higher carbon dioxide emission and occupies a big percentage of carbon footprints, which is greenhouse gas emission around the globe. According to worldfootwear.com, in 2018, footwear production worldwide reached 24.2 billion pairs. None of them use recyclable material, so once torn, they are left undecayed for decades, causing environmental issue. Shoe soles produced by the Hongwei, such as rubber and EVA, are not environmentally friendly because can release harmful chemicals into the environment. Today's people are aware about the environmentally product than before. Suggestion: company can alternate their shoe sole into material that are sustainable to environment. First, rubber can alternate to natural rubber, example latte heavy. The harvesting of heavy milk helps the tree to flourish rather than weakening it. Next, EVA can alternate to the cork. Cork is harvested from cork tree with the material forming just under the upper bark layer and it is naturally renewable. Advantage using cork are highly durable and odor resistant.
Thank you, Ali. Now I'm going to present on the internal control issues. For the first issue is no proper documentation. Documentation gives evidence of the transaction that occurred at specific time. Important information can be easily shared within the company. In this case, we can see that Hongwei does not have any proper documentation on the expenditure incurred and the bank balances. So the impact is external auditor took a long time to complete the audited financial statement. The overall performance of Hongwei in that particular year will also be delayed. Thus, the stakeholders such as investors cannot make decision on time to invest in the company. So we would like to suggest that top management enforce and make it compulsory to have proper documentation. One of the control is by hiring a supervisor in each department to ensure the management do a proper documentation with all information needed. Information on Hongwei can be obtained by the stakeholder and financial statement can be produced. So the next issue is no framework is implemented and effective internal control is achieved within the company, as well as current and emerging risks also can be reduced and eliminated. Huawei should implement frameworks such as COSO Enterprise Risk Management Framework. The goal of this framework is to provide assurance on the achievement of objectives by identify risks and manage them to be within the risk appetite. I will explain two example component risk management from Huawei have issue with. The first one is information and communication. The director does not set the tone right to communicate to the lower level as the director itself do not discharge their duties effectively. The lower management will then follow the director's example. For example, the internet auditor do not review and give assurance on the risk in financial management. The impact is fraud may occur in the financial statement since management does not want to communicate with the external auditor. Internal auditor don't give assurance on the effectiveness of communication between top management and lower level. In this case, external auditor may give a disclaimer opinion because they could not identify whether the financial statement may be stated because of fraud. So we would like to suggest that director to set the right tone within the organisation. For example, held a gathering with the team of free from fraud to create awareness among the employees. Thus, this will help the lower level to do their responsibility and scale to commit any illegal activities. The next component is control activities. Management need to control the activities to ensure the risk responses is in line with the policy, procedure and the risk appetite. However, in the case of Huawei, no internal control is implemented and there is no one who review the work done by the management. So the impact is external auditor were unable to obtain appropriate evidence from Huawei subsidiary whether the group still had ownership over the inventories. Moreover, issue on ownership of the inventory will affect the trust and create conflict between Huawei and the subsidiary. So we would like to suggest that for the issue of inventory, Huawei can implement control of segregation of duties. The ownership of inventory need to be properly documented by accounting department employee and shall be reviewed by the head of accounting department and to be authorized by the CEO. Thus, Huawei will not only minimize any risk of error and fraud, but also ownership of inventories of the subsidiary can be determined. So the last issue is incompetent management. The management with high competency will be able to discharge their duty for an organization to run smoothly with their knowledge and skill. In this case, the subsidiary does not give commitment to external auditor on the ownership and recoverable amount of subsidiary, which indicate that they don't have any knowledge about it. So the impact is overall performance of Huawei will be affected since the management does not have high level of knowledge and skill. With incompetent management, Huawei cannot compete with other successful shoe manufacturers. Moreover, external auditor cannot complete their work due to no cooperation by the management. So we would like to suggest that Human Resource Department to develop a competency model which set a guideline of specific skills, knowledge and behavioral requirements that enable the employee to perform their job successfully. Huawei can take an example of this competency model from Ohio State University to success in hiring and developing a competent employee. For example, Huawei can send their employees and directors to the training to have further insight on what is expected in them. Thus, Huawei could improve further the operation of company as well as competency of the employees. Now, I'm going to pass this presentation to Hanis.
Thank you, Iman. Now, I will continue with the audit issue arise in Huawei Holdings PUNCAK. The first issue is no management support during audit process. The issue arises when Huawei's subsidiary team management has made no commitments to the audit process that results to the delay in releasing Huawei's annual report. Based on Companies Act 2016, Section 259, a company needs to lodge its financial statement and reports with the Registrar of Company for each financial year. And in the case of public company, the account must be lodged with the ROC within 30 days from its annual general meeting. Not doing so will carry a fine up to 50,000 ringgit. And if it's a continuing offence, the company will be fined up to 1,000 ringgit for each additional day. Due to the delay in releasing the annual report, Huawei's share price is dropping year by year that may bring lost trust of current investor and difficult to attract new investor. Therefore, we suggest that the management optimize management's process to support the audit. The management needs to establish and execute its own internal process for planning, managing and supporting the audit to ensure smooth audit process. This includes holding internal planning meeting to prepare for the audit and having a schedule to support timely response to auditor requests. Next issue is inability to obtain sufficient audit evidence due to management imposed limitation. This can be seen when Huawei's subsidiary team management has failed to present adequate evidence, preventing the auditor from resolving the concerns with the inventories ownership, disclosure of risk assessment, and legal claim investigation. This limitation includes refusal to communicate, and I assume there may be missing accounting records as there is insufficient audit evidence given, or they try to hide some material events as they cannot confirm the legal claim. Companies Act 2016 66 sub 5 state clearly about the auditor of holding company's right to its subsidiaries. Auditor can access at all reasonable times the accounting and other records, including information and explanation from officer and auditor of the subsidiary when doing the audit process. As the auditor was not able to perform sufficient tests with audit evidence to make a decision about a particular account balance, the auditor may issue a qualified audit report or disclaim an opinion. Based on ISA 705 paragraph 11 makes it clear that if the auditor becomes aware that management has imposed a limitation after acceptance of an audit, the auditor shall request that the limitation is removed from management and the board. Failing this, auditor needs to determine whether it is possible to perform alternative procedures to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. The third issue is the auditor could not determine the disclosure of significant subsequent events occurred in adjusted to the financial statements audited due to insufficient evidence and no proper documentations by management. The auditor could not determine on how they intend to deal with events that will require the financial statement to be amended after the auditors have signed their report but before the financial statements are issued. That results to the delay in releasing company's annual report. This issue relates to the International Accounting Standard 10 events after the reporting period. IAS 10 states that an entity should adjust its financial statement for events after the reporting period together with the necessary disclosure. We suggest the subsidiaries management to have good document management. It is a critical component because it's the repository where all of the objective evidence and proof surrounding an organization's product are housed. Proper documentations can help better navigate audits and easily locate critical information, eliminating unnecessary costs, reducing manual work, and easily to determine the significant subsequent events. Now, I will pass this presentation to FASYA.
Next, I will explain on corporate governance issue in Hongwei. The first issue is unbalanced composition of board. All non-executive directors and chief financial officer has resigned without prior notice. This means that there is only non-independent executive director left in the organization. This is a non-compliance to Bursa listing requirement under Chapter 15.02 Composition of the Board of Directors, whereby it states that a company listing under Bursa must have at least 2 directors or 1/3 of the Board of Directors as independent directors. It is also against Practice 4.1 Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance (MCCG), which requires companies to have at least half of board comprising independent directors. Independent directors play essential role in protecting the interests of shareholders and can make significant contributions to companies' decision-making. Thus, their absence will lead to biased decision-making and unfulfillment of many stakeholders' interests. The stakeholders can no longer depend on the board's decision and the company's annual report as they are unreliable. Our suggestion is to appoint directors according to the listing requirement, which requires a balance between independent and non-independent directors. A director's vacant position must be filled in immediately in order to have a functioning board and fulfill the need of the stakeholders. The second issue is neglection of duties by the chairman and CEO. Chairman and CEO failed or refused to communicate with either the regulators or the new board. This is contrary to the Principle A Guidance 1.2 MCCG, which lists the key responsibilities of the chairman. Some of them includes providing effective communication with the stakeholders and that their views are communicated to the board as a whole. Implications that may arise due to this issue is that the new board members will not have adequate information on the current situation of the company and will lead to inaccurate views and decisions made by them. The company will continue to have poor performance despite having new board members. The chairman and CEO was fined with 1.6 million ringgit due to this issue. So our suggestion is to revise the board charter and emphasize directors, including the CEO, to follow the guidelines in the board charter. Use scorecard methodology by creating chairman's scorecard in presenting traits of an effective chairman as a benchmark for the chairman. The third issue is incompetent and dysfunctional committee and company secretary. Hongwei is facing so many issues, of which, if we look closely, arise from the result of incompetent committee and company secretary. In terms of internal control and auditing issues mentioned by Iman and Hanis earlier, no such issues will arise should the company have a well-functioning audit committee. This is because the function of audit committee includes reviewing the internal audit plan and assessments and whether or not appropriate action is taken on the recommendations as mentioned in Bursa Listing Requirement Chapter 15.12. Nomination Committee, who is in charge of selecting and assessing directors according to Bursa Listing Requirement Chapter 15.08a, have done a lousy job in appointing the directors of Hongwei, seeing how the company turns out to be under the lead of these directors. The company secretary is supposed to support the board by providing advice on both administrative and governance matters and ensuring adherence to rules. This is in accordance to practice 1.5 MCCG. However, it seems that they are not performing their duties well, which results to the directors being fined for all the breaches done, such as financial reporting breaches and corporate governance breaches. Our suggestion is the company should send the audit committee and directors for a continuous training program to sharpen their skills. The nomination committee should revise their nomination policy to improve their nomination process. The company should select a competent company secretary with years of experience in the industry. The fourth issue is poor risk management. Poor risk management is an important aspect of corporate governance. However, Hongwei is having poor risk management as they are facing the risk of fraud, whereby the management of its subsidiaries fail to disclose the results of their risk assessment, whether the financial statements may be misstated due to fraud. The current organization does not have risk management committee. This does not comply with MCCG Step Up Practice 10.3, whereby the board is advised to establish a risk management committee that comprises of a majority of independent directors to oversee the company's risk management framework and policy. This issue will put the company in a tight position whereby there are possibilities of fraud happening in the subsidiaries management. With news of potential fraud happening, it will chase away the investors and will portray bad image to the company. Without proper risk management, future risks cannot be predicted. So it is best for the company to establish a risk management committee, and also they should also use ISO 31000 as principle and guideline for risk management.
Hi, alright, let's move on to the last part, which is about the financial condition of Hongwei. So is it bad or good? What are the issues they are facing and how to tackle them? So my team and I average through 4 types of ratio, which are liquidity, leverage, profitability, and market. So the first one is liquidity ratio. So this ratio shows the ability of the Hongwei to maintain its short-term debt paying ability. Through this ratio, it shows that Hongwei liquidity position is bad. Hongwei is not able to generate cash quickly to settle its debt. Decline in this ratio can be attributable to decrease in the current asset. Moreover, Hongwei's quick ratio also decreases, and this is below acceptable level of 1. Hongwei may have difficulty in meeting their current debt. Therefore, Hongwei needs to improve their liquidity by reduce overhead expenses. The leaner the company spend, the higher the profit and the more liquidity they will preserve. And also, Hongwei may use sweep account. Second is the leverage ratio. This ratio shows the ability of Hongwei to meet its long-term obligation. However, Hongwei is not fully utilizing its source of finance such as debt. When a company has a negative D/E ratio, this means that the company has negative shareholder equity. In other words, it means that Hongwei has more liability than its asset. This can be improved by having a proper inventory management and increase the revenue. Since Hongwei has inventory problem, they should effectively manage its inventory to ensure no money goes to waste. Next is the profitability ratio. It is used to assess Huawei's ability in generating profit and the value for shareholder. The ROCE indicates that Huawei generates less operating profit from the capital employed. Huawei's management is not efficient and effective as they are not able to utilize its resources to generate revenue. As for the operating profit margin, it shows that Huawei has poor cost control and lack of internal control over expenses. Meanwhile, the low ROE indicates that Huawei's management is doing a poor job at using its investor fund to generate a return. Since Huawei has a negative ROE, this means its shareholders are losing rather than gaining value. Therefore, Huawei should reduce its inventory and lower its costs. Last but not least is the market ratio. This ratio is used to evaluate the current share price of a publicly held company stock and to determine whether a Huawei share are overpriced or underpriced. Decreasing EPS give poor indication about the health of Huawei company and give lower return to the shareholder. This decrease could be due to the release of annual report and decrease in profit after tax. Next, even though the ratio increases but it's still negative value. This shows Huawei was losing money in the past 12 months and the company is now reporting losses. All in all, Huawei financial conditions are not doing well. This is due to the consistent of losses for 2 consecutive years. In 2015, financial conditions of Huawei are not that bad. There is still room for Huawei to improve their financial condition. However, the financial condition worsened in year 2016 as the amount of liability exceeding the amount of asset. Huawei and its group are experiencing asset deficiency and they are exposed to the risk of bankruptcy. They don't generate sufficient profit. This is a bad sign for investors and they will avoid placing money in a company that fails to consistently deliver positive return. Thus, Huawei financial conditions are bad and their business is not attractive anymore due to the losses incurred. So I think that's all from us. Thank you.